The female astronaut returned to the Earth after a long life, but she found herself a cheat. The cheerful daughter became lonely. The loving husband became a green-haired man. There are more strange things. She didn't learn to play the piano, but she can play the beautiful music. The woman was very confused. Did she go to outer space, or did she go through the consciousness world? That night, Joan took her daughter Alice walking on the quiet road. The voice in the radio kept screaming, "The world is about to be destroyed." Alice was a little scared. She asked her mother, "When will Dad arrive?" Joan didn't answer. Instead, she looked at the police car getting closer and closer behind her, nervous. Fortunately, the police car passed by, didn't stop her. Joan sighed. "Take my daughter to the remote cabin." After tidying up the room, Joan put something similar to a flashlight hiding in a secluded place. Just when she was about to return to the cabin, suddenly she heard the voice of her daughter calling from afar. Joan rushed back to the house. She only saw her daughter sleeping on the bed, but what's going on with that call? Joan closed the door and went out. She remembered what happened 5 weeks ago. Joan is an astronaut. She was on a mission with her colleagues at the International Space Station. She had to wait 84 days to return, so she could only use video calls with her husband and daughter. This day, the space station will conduct a special experiment. Under the conditions of zero gravity in space, test a new material, and experiment with the equipment. It was the flashlight that Joan was holding. Commander Barlow started the device. However, without waiting to observe the reaction of the material, the space station sent a huge sound. The whole cabin was shaking. In the chaos, Barlow's arm was pierced by an iron rod. The ground command center was busy notifying the astronaut. "The cabin has been severely under pressure. We must hurry to the number 1 escape room for emergency evacuation. Joan's cabin has returned to peace." She came to Barlow. Found that she was in a coma due to excessive bleeding, Joan decided to give Barlow a diagnosis and let her colleagues check the spaceship. As a result, bad news came one by one. The space station has been hit hard. No. 1 escape room. Power failure, only number 2 escape room can be used, and number 2 escape room can only sit 3 people when everyone was at a loss. The ground space station project manager, Henry. After seeing the data sent by the flashlight experiment, he ordered Joan and others to carry out the experiment anyway. Joan had no choice but to go outside the station to do maintenance. After inspection, Joan found that the space station was seriously damaged. Can't be repaired at all. After the command of the Aeronautical Bureau, ignore Henry's request, let Joan and others hurry back. However, on the way back, Joan accidentally found a clear crack outside the space station. She went to the crack to check. As a result, a body of an astronaut who had become a dry corpse hit her. If it wasn't for the safety rope, I'm afraid Joan will also become a dry corpse in space. Joan returned to the space station in good spirits. She was very sad to learn that Barlow had passed away, but there are still 4 people in the space station. How to decide who to go and who to stay. After a brief silence, Joan decided to dedicate herself as an agent commander. 3 teammates were very moved and immediately started. Number 2 escape room to leave, and Joan is going to repair. Number 1 escape room. She has 19 hours. Such a long-lost situation. The Aeronautical Bureau has notified Joan's family, let them see the last time, and Joan didn't rush to repair. No 1 escape room, but to find a bracelet in the room. This is a gift from her daughter. In her heart, it is something more precious than life. After getting the bracelet, Joan began to replace the power battery. I didn't expect the ground command center to send a new mission. Let her get the new material in the flashlight. The project manager, Henry, said, "This material is very important. Will change the whole world and human civilization." Joan decided to go back and get the flashlight after the battery was replaced. At this time, her husband, Margaret, and daughter Alice has come to the command center. But before she could speak, communication is interrupted. Even the lights of the space station are dying out. Joan knows this is a sign that the energy of the space station is running out. Joan was a little anxious. Suddenly, she heard a strange sound from the cabin. She went back to the cabin. Just arrived at the flashlight lab. I found a strange scene in front. There is actually a corridor in the office building. She walked to the end of the corridor, hang her own bracelet on the door, and when she looked back, it's still the scenery inside the space station. What the hell is going on? Joan never figured it out. When she came back to her senses, Joan in the snow continued to move forward with the sound. Soon, she came to another cabin. At this time, the sky was still snowing, but the amazing thing is, these snowflakes fall very slowly, just like a mirror. And this cabin is very similar to her cabin. Even the layout inside is no different. Joan walked to the end of the corridor. "See a door here. Hang your own bracelet on it." She opened the door. I found my daughter hiding in it. When she saw her mother, she was very excited. Asked her where she had been during this time. Alice has obviously been here for a while. She was cold and weak. Joan hurriedly carried her daughter back to her cabin. "Warm her up." I didn't expect my daughter to ask her a strange question again. "Are you a ghost?" Joan thought her daughter might be frozen. She hurriedly put hot water to bathe her. She smelled the smell on her daughter's hair. "Everything feels so familiar." Joan didn't hesitate to say something strange. "Your smell is back." At this time, Joan suddenly saw in the mirror my daughter was lying in bed. Who is the daughter in the bathroom? Maybe it's the daughter who woke up. She got up and looked at her mother in confusion. Joan hurried back to the bathroom to check, but found that there was no trace of it. Even the bathwater is gone. Joan didn't know what happened. She smelled the hair of her just awakened daughter, but found that the smell was different from the daughter just now. What the hell is going on? This is not the first time Joan has encountered such a supernatural event. At the space station, when Joan was repairing the power battery, a piece of white cloth suddenly floated over. She turned around to see found that Paul's body had opened its eyes. This scene made Joan extremely scared. She endured the fear of the heart. Reclose her eyes for Paul. These strange signs make her uncertain if she can still live. So she started to record with a recorder, hope to dispel the fear of the heart, just don't know why. The recorder is always accompanied by a low-pitched male voice. At this time, Joan found a palm outside the warehouse. She opened the door. It turned out to be Paul's broken arm. At this time, the ground command center. I haven't been able to contact Joan for a long time. Joan has been identified as dead, but Joan worked hard to repair it. At the last moment, she successfully repaired the escape room number. However, when she was excited to return to Earth, but found that there was a lack of ground signal, the old warehouse navigation could not be started. Fortunately, Joan herself is also a high-knowledge person. Actually calculate by hand, combine the parameters used before, simulate the latest track parameters and routes. After everything is ready, Joan remembered the task of the project manager, Henry. She ran back to the lab to find the flashlight, take it back to the escape room. Joan has done all the hard work, but still don't know if she can go home safely. She recorded everything she wanted to say to her daughter on the tablet and stay in the space station. It's also a good idea to write a last word in advance. But when Joan was about to launch the escape room, but found that the propeller had a malfunction, can't separate from the space station. According to the instruction, it must be done by 2 people at the same time to eliminate the malfunction. Joan was in a daze. Now she really can't do anything but don't know why. She, who had decided to lie flat, found that the propeller malfunction had been eliminated by herself. Joan was excited and confused. And when she looked at the space station, but vaguely saw a figure, Joan thought it might be her own eyes. She didn't have time to think, because the next process is still very dangerous. The entire escape room smashed into the thick atmosphere, caused a strong friction. The ground command center finally received a signal from the escape room. No, everyone was in a daze. It's just that Joan is using a track landing. No one knows where the escape room will land. Can only expand the expected range. Large-scale search. Soon, Joan's escape room hit the ground heavily. Proud of the final landing, Joan survived. When Joan woke up, found herself on the Earth. She was full of joy for the rest of her life. I didn't expect the first one to welcome her was a fierce wolf. Joan was very nervous. Just when she thought she was going to be a wolf for lunch, a gunshot. It turned out to be the rescue team from the ground center who arrived in time. There were also her husband, Margaret, and daughter, Alice. See the family again. Joan was more excited, and the project manager, Henry. All she cares about is the flashlight and the new substance inside. Henry can't wait to turn on the device. Didn't see any abnormalities. It's just that he didn't notice. The mysterious substance in the flashlight emits a strange light. Maybe it's affected by this strange substance. Originally a family of 3, suddenly fell into a strange scene. Alice found that there was no one around her, only herself and the helicopter. And Joan also fell into the same strange scene. It's just that it's back to normal soon. Joan said a word in Dutch with a family I didn't expect Alice and Margaret to be blind. After the words, Joan fell asleep again because of weakness and to the cabin. This is the 5th week after she returned to the earth. During this period, she experienced too many supernatural events. She asked Alice if she had seen my daughter. "Have you seen another?" Alice was terrified and blind. Joan hurried to let her daughter put on her clothes and find the hidden flashlight. Once again, step into the snow to look for another Alice. In fact, in these 5 weeks, Joan really experienced too much. When she just returned to the earth for a physical examination, Alice thought her mother had completely changed. She was lying there like she was dead, and at the hearing the next day, the reporter asked why the accident happened. Joan just wanted to tell her experience, but was interrupted by colleagues and said the investigation was not over, so there was no specific result. Joan finally returned to the earth. "I just want to live a quiet life with my family." But because of the accident, she must stay at the base for investigation. At the incident investigation meeting, Joan and a few colleagues all arrived. The person in charge of this investigation is the chief commander of the evacuation operation, Elena. She used to be a well-known astronaut belonging to the Russian Space Agency. At this meeting, Joan said what she saw. She thought it was the space station that caused the accident, judging from the attire. This should be a female astronaut in the Soviet Union in the 1960s. However, Elena denied it directly. She said that Ganshi could not be on the orbit of space garbage for decades, and there was no report of the death of an astronaut on the orbit. She thought it was all a hallucination of Joan. Joan knew she was not hallucinating, but there was no result in fighting. When eating in the dormitory, Joan found that her husband's hairstyle had changed. She praised her husband's new discovery. But Margaret was obviously not used to it, because they haven't communicated like this for a long time. Later, on the way to the bathroom, Joan accidentally fell and turned around. She found the corridor of the office building again. Her bracelet is still hanging on that wooden door. Why would she see all this? Maybe it's because Henry turned on the flashlight again. Henry told the assistant, "This mysterious substance will produce binary signals when it collides. 2 results of one thing. Like people say, parallel universe space. It's just hard to see on Earth." Henry was staring at this device all afternoon, but there was no feedback. Assistant thinks it doesn't make sense, but Henry knows data in space and where the escape pod landed all show that the data is abnormal. This situation must exist. Finally, at midnight, Henry saw the mysterious binary signal again. He wanted to take a picture of it, but I don't know why the electronic equipment can't take a picture, so he could only draw it by hand. And it was at this moment Joan saw the wooden door of the corridor again. The next day, the investigation meeting continued. Elena came up with a new saying. She said that in the 1970s, people threw garbage bags into space. It's very similar to the clothes of astronauts. Maybe Joan mistook the garbage bag for an astronaut. Joan can't refute. She can only accept this result, but her colleague Alice came to comfort Joan, said she would always support Joan, said she would touch Joan's face, Joan's instinctive resistance. This made Alice a little suspicious. On the other hand, the mysterious material in the flashlight began to flash again. Henry happened to see Alice playing outside, and the daughter of the sacrificed commander. Paul, Alice is hiding. Seeing Lana throw her rabbit into the mist, she rushed out to stop, but Nala said she didn't step on her rabbit, but she was kind enough to find the rabbit back and give it to Alice. Alice picked up the rabbit, found that there was no water and fog on it. She was a little puzzled. Did she really see it wrong? Henry, upstairs, saw all this, naturally understood that it should be the effect of the dual quantum energy of the strange material. She walked to Alice and told her the same thing can have 2 different states. For example, your rabbit is clean in this world. In another world, it may be dirty. There is a pre-limited space between these 2 worlds. In the pre-limited space, the rabbit will keep changing between clean and dirty until the moment you see it. It is fixed to a form. Alice understood, and at home, Joan was talking to Margaret. Soon, it came to the bed. Margaret thinks Joan has changed a lot. Look at her eyes as if she loves her. Joan was laughed at. She has always loved her husband. She didn't know why her husband suddenly said that. The next day, Joan and her colleagues went to worship the dead commander, Paul. Joan told her colleagues she did see the astronaut's body, and it's exactly the same as the Russian astronaut's costume 60 years ago. Her colleagues reminded her, "The picture you found. It's the same as the investigation team leader." Alina Joan was a little shocked. However, a strange scene soon appeared again when she was worshipping Paul. She actually saw the dead, Paul standing on the other side, holding a bunch of white flowers. And when she wanted to take a closer look, she found Paul gone again. This kind of strange situation makes Joan a little upset. She's no longer obsessed with seeing garbage bags or dry corpses to get out of here as soon as possible. She simply admitted that she was wrong. Back to her real home, Joan felt very comfortable. She just didn't know when her husband changed to a blue car. It's a little weird. After the funeral, the car in the house has always been blue. Joan fell into silence again. In fact, all that Joan has experienced, Henry and Alina have also experienced it. The two are not only partners, they used to be comrades on space missions together. They have been keeping in touch in private. I heard that Alina has a terminal illness. Soon, the two decided to cherish every opportunity for in-depth communication. I didn't expect it to be so deep. Alina became that dry corpse. Henry was so scared. And the strange thing is, in another space, Henry is talking to a police officer on a cruise. This police officer has been investigating Henry. He thought the space mission back then, it was Henry who killed his teammate. Angry, Henry pushed the police officer directly into the sea. Joan continued to look for another daughter in the snow. Alice told her mother, "People who have been to outer space may have hallucinations." But Joan said to Alice, "I don't want to make you sad, but I don't think you are my daughter." Alice asked, "If I'm not your daughter, then who are you? What did you do to my mother?" Joan and Alice found that things were not quite right. In fact, after Joan returned home, everything is full of reason. For example, the red car in her memory turned blue. For example, when playing the question game, Joan said her name in Swedish. The husband and daughter did not respond at all, because they don't speak Swedish. But Joan remembers very clearly, she has told her family many times, her Swedish name. Mark doesn't understand the change of his wife. Before that, the couple was very close. There was almost no communication. She was ready to divorce, hearing her husband's words. Joan felt very incredible. In her memory, the couple had a good relationship. In the space station, she missed her husband every day. But looking at her husband's indifference, she began to reflect on whether she really had a mental problem. Joan wanted to talk to her husband. Her husband threw out another shock bomb. She said Joan was not at home at all. On weekends, she took her daughter to the cabin for vacation. She also heard that Joan and her co-worker Alice got together. People around her have long spread. She hopes her wife can admit it. But Joan didn't do it. How to admit it? Joan wants to seek help from a psychologist. The psychologist believes that this is Joan. After experiencing a life-and-death crisis in space caused cognitive impairment. The doctor prescribed a box of medicine to Joan, but she was very resistant, because this drug will affect people's bodies. A few days later, Joan returned to work at the Aeronautical Bureau. Her colleagues applauded enthusiastically. Only Henry didn't know. Thinking that the double quantum experiment was in a bottleneck, it is. Very likely to suspend the project, Henry called Joan to the office. He took the initiative to mention the strange events of the space station. He said he had a colleague. His colleague's child had passed away during a space mission. This colleague almost died. It was at a critical moment that he was reminded of his child's voice. To survive. There are many similar things he wants to know if Joan has experienced anything similar. Joan didn't answer. She looked at the flashlight in front of her. In her mind, it was the strange scenes in the space station after work. Joan went to pick up her daughter from school. The teacher told her that Alice was too lonely at school, also a bit sensitive, should be related to family influence. At the same time, she found her husband didn't get along with the school teacher. It seems that the relationship between the two is not ordinary. She questioned her husband, but her husband said she was too sensitive. After returning home, Joan found her daughter missing. She found her hiding in the closet for a long time. There is also her bracelet on the closet door. It turns out that Alice often hides in the closet. This is her safety net. It's just that Joan doesn't understand a lively and cheerful daughter. Why did you become so lonely? After the daughter fell asleep, Joan saw the piano in the house again. She had never learned the piano fingers on the keyboard, but can play wonderful music independently. Joan thinks that there may be a problem with her spirit, so she is ready to take psychotropic drugs. But she found that this drug, it's very similar to the drug prescribed by the Aeronautical Bureau. She took the drug from the Aeronautical Bureau to the lab for testing. Sure enough, she found that these are all psychotropic drugs. Then she went to the database, found a lot of colleagues who came back from space have taken these drugs because they all claimed to have seen incredible things. At this time, 2 staff came to deliver the goods, but the 2 of them didn't seem to see Joan at all. Joan felt very strange. She rushed to the side of one person and shouted. As a result, the 2 delivery men disappeared. Joan ran out in a panic, passing by Henry's room. Henry is actually talking to himself on the computer. He said to Joan, meaningfully, "Curiosity will kill the cat." These abnormalities make Joan breathless. At the same time, Alice came over to negotiate with Joan. They had agreed to go far away. Now her mind has not changed. Joan listened to a series of fierce circles, and when she came home, Alice actually chased her over and confessed to Margaret in person. Joan still tried to deny it, but Margaret couldn't hear it at all. Joan was also very irritated. She pushed the miscellaneous things on the table, but found 2 tapes. One is the sound she recorded at the space station. The other is a message from a female astronaut before her death in 1967. At this time, Alice was woken up by the sound downstairs. She got up and went downstairs to check the situation, but found a funeral for her mother downstairs. There was a little girl who looked exactly like herself in the funeral. Also looking at herself, Alice screamed. Joan and Margaret rushed over. Everything in front of Alice disappeared again. Margaret held her daughter and put her in the closet. Joan accused her husband of not doing this, but that's the only way she can feel safe with her father. Margaret thinks Joan scared her daughter. She hopes Joan will take the medicine according to the doctor, but Joan thinks it's the astronauts who want her to take the medicine. She forgot everything she saw in space. Margaret took out her phone and called Alice. Wanted her to take Joan away. Joan was in a hurry to stop, but she accidentally pushed her husband to the ground and fainted. Joan was in a hurry to call the ambulance. Then she hurried to pack up, take her daughter away. She thought it must be the astronauts who set her up. Let her forget everything in the space station. The more so, the more Joan wanted to know the truth. The 2 tapes she received at the time. One is what she recorded on the tape recorder at the space station, but she had lost contact with the ground. Why can the ground still record? She went back to the astronauts to check the data, but she failed because she didn't have enough power, but she didn't leave right away. But she secretly took the strange flashlight. She plans to leave this city with her daughter first. On the way, she asked her daughter why she liked to hide in the closet. Her daughter said that because there was always a woman saying strange things in her ear. Joan wanted her daughter to overcome her fear, so let her daughter draw the appearance of a woman I didn't expect her daughter to draw. It was actually Joan who had seen the dry corpse astronaut. Joan felt more strange. She decided to go to the house of the person who sent her the tape. As a result, she found that this was a pair of sisters. Both of them are astronomy lovers. It's a tape that was intercepted with old equipment, but when they sent it to the astronauts, but it was identified as a fake tape. Her brother was imprisoned for this. This time I sent the tape to Joan. I just hope I can help her find out the truth. In the sister's house, she also found a photo of Henry. Henry was once an astronaut, but after a space plan, his mood changed dramatically, and he also tried to come here to find the tape. Joan wanted to know more, but the 2 sisters let Joan in. It turned out that the 2 of them had been under the supervision of the astronauts. Then they brought Joan to the sea. The old lady said, "A place 8 kilometers off the coast. It seems to be able to reach a kind of boundary. You can hear a voice that you usually can't hear." After reaching the destination, the old lady gave up a tape in 1967. At that time, the only female astronaut in the sky was Elena, but the tape showed that Elena was dead. Why did Elena return safely in reality? Then they played another tape. It turned out to be the voice of Commander Paul. Joan's face changed. She saw Paul's death with her own eyes. How could there be such a voice? The old lady said, "From humans to space." More than 500 people have already flown out of the Earth, but a large part of these people have been diagnosed as mental disorders. To know that they are all trained, talented people. How could it be easy to have a problem? The old lady thinks there must be something wrong in space, and someone in the astronauts is covering up the truth. On the other side, Henry found that his beloved flashlight was gone, shaking all over. This is when he thought of, it seems to come from another world. His own vain voice, it seems to be inviting him to celebrate Thanksgiving. Then Henry wrote on the glass, "Don't be in a hurry." And in another parallel world, Henry, in a flower shirt, is on the phone. And on the glass in front of him, I also saw Henry in a white shirt. It turns out that two parallel worlds can communicate like this. Is this the quantum entanglement? Can a quantum change cause another quantum change? It's not over yet. Henry found Alice. Said we should go find John together. Because he might have taken the flashlight, Alice didn't want to take Henry. But when she saw Henry urinating excitedly, she finally agreed. In fact, it was not Henry's intention to pee his pants. It was another world's flower shirt. Henry, white shirt. Henry asked the flower shirt, "Did you stop peeing?" The flower shirt was sure. The flower shirt, Henry thought it was the white shirt that took quantum experiments to space. That's why everything happened. So, sooner or later, I'm going to the world of white shirt, Henry. But the white shirt, Henry, said the flower shirt couldn't do it. The flower shirt is not angry. At least he has now made the white shirt pee his pants. On the other side, John has brought Alice to the house. He put up those tapes. There was a recording of him talking to his daughter. But after Alice heard it, it wasn't him talking to John, because he doesn't speak Swedish at all. And at the end of the recording, it was a huge explosion. And Paul called John. What the hell is going on? It turns out that these are all from another parallel space. On the space station, 5 weeks ago, John was talking to his daughter. Paul was doing a quantum experiment. When he lifted the light, the machine started. A strong vibration came. There were two results in this vibration. One result is that Paul was hit by an iron rod through his arm, finally died of bleeding. The other result is that John's head hit the door of the space station. Strong sacrifice. We call the world where John died the A world, and the world where Paul died is the B world. The story of John that we talked about before, it's been happening in the B world. Maybe it's because of the influence of strange substances. John, of the A world, has died, but his spiritual consciousness has come to the body of John, of the B world. That's why John and this world are inseparable. That's why John found his daughter and husband are different from the impression. In the A world, Alice is lively, Mark and John are also very loving. The two heard about the space station accident. The news of John's sacrifice is very sad. When they arrived at the astronauts' bureau, John's body hasn't come back. Because he will return with Paul's number 1 escape pod, Paul has repaired the power battery. It seems that what John does in the B universe are all replaced by Paul in the A universe. The difference is that Paul in the A universe did not find the flashlight. Paul also experienced all kinds of strange things that John experienced, even feel that John is alive. He can always hear the sound of John's 465. Paul is a little scared. With the return to the Earth, back to the gravity environment, John's body will definitely bleed, so he decided to leave John's body in space. On the other hand, Alice can't wait for her mother at the astronauts' bureau. She went to hide in the corridor cabinet. At this time, she found that her mother's figure was getting closer and closer. But when she pushed the cabinet door open, she didn't see anything. This corresponds to the corridor that John saw in the space station. Mysterious matter affected 2 spaces. Soon, Paul also returned to the Earth. He also experienced everything that John experienced in the B universe, including screw failure, including seeing John's figure when he was worshipped. But there are also differences. At the investigation meeting, Paul mentioned the double quantum experiment he and Henry did, but the Astronauts Bureau directly stated they have never done any double quantum experiments. Paul doubted life. He began to collect information on the internet. The result was a video of a failed landing many years ago. Many astronauts died in the video, only Henry survived. This shocked Paul even more because in his impression there was indeed an accident. But Henry's excellent response made this spaceflight successful. No astronauts died. Paul doesn't know why all this happened. He decided to ask Professor Henry. After all, he is the initiator of the double quantum experiment. But when he came to the Astronauts Bureau, he was told that there was no one named Henry in the Astronauts Bureau. It turned out that after the space accident, the surviving Henry left the Astronauts Bureau soon, became an ordinary person. In fact, the reason is also very simple. because Paul is the same as John. His body is the body of A universe, but consciousness comes from B universe. In fact, not only did John and Paul have problems, Alice in the A universe also often found various strange situations. For example, there is no piano at home, but he heard the sound of the piano. For example, in his mother's funeral, he actually saw another himself. This scene was also seen by Paul. He fainted directly. Then Alice saw her mother. This just responds to Alice in B universe. See the scene of the mother's funeral. Alice shouted out loud. Everyone thought this was caused by her missing her mother. Mark decided to take his daughter away from home. Go outside to relax. Alice chose to go to the cottage on vacation. Mark did not want to go against his daughter. In the end, he could only agree. Soon, the two came to the cottage. But Alice has been thinking about her mother. She told her father, they will definitely see their mother again. Mark thought he didn't care enough for his daughter. That's why his daughter became like this. He repeatedly told his daughter, Mom is dead. We will never see Mom again. But Alice still didn't believe it. At this time, Paul was also working hard to find out the truth. He came to Henry's apartment in a universe. Knock on the door. It's Henry inside, but Henry in front of him doesn't know Paul at all. The two talk about the space accident that year. Paul told Henry, you saved everyone that year, is a big hero in people's hearts, more of a mentor in the future of the astronaut. Why did you become what you are now? Henry obviously knows all the truth, but he didn't plan to tell Paul, or even take out his gun. On the other hand, Alice in a universe is sleeping in the cottage. Suddenly, he found the light outside the door. He got up to look at the window. It was his missing mother outside. Alice wore shoes to go out and check, but there was no one outside. He could only call his mother helplessly, and this also corresponds to the scene in B universe. When Chow-En heard his daughter shouting, Alice took out her flashlight and continued to look for her mother. And at this time, Chow-En in B universe, studying recording with his daughter, they mentioned the quantum additive. It turned out that Chow-En in B universe, I've been in touch with this experiment for a long time, and Chow-En in A universe, until the day of the accident. This experiment is a study of an object. There may be two situations, then they played it again. A recording 2 days after the accident. It was Paul's voice. Paul was worried that Chow-En's body would bleed on the way back, so he asked to leave the body at the space station. Listen to this recording. Chow-En and Alice have fully understood. She is not his mother. She is not his daughter. They need to find a way to solve this problem. Then, Chow-En was ready to put the flashlight out. It was also here that he heard his daughter shouting again, and when he returned to the room, found that his daughter was sleeping. Alice in a universe has been looking for a long time, didn't find his mother, but saw another wooden house. After he opened the wooden house, there is nothing in it, but there is a living kitten. Alice is cold and afraid, can only hide in the closet to warm up. I didn't expect a gust of wind to close the closet. He can't get out. Chow-En in B universe rushed to the wooden house. Here, under the influence of the flashlight, A universe and B universe overlap. Chow-En in B universe saw the daughter of A universe. So he took his daughter to the wooden house to warm up and take a bath. It's just like Schrodinger's cat. When Alice in B universe wakes up and becomes an observer, the two universes are separated. Chow-En took Alice to look for Alice in A universe, B universe. Alice left the flashlight in the snow. Chow-En was worried that Alice's safety could only catch up. At this time, Alice in a universe also walked out of the room to look for his mother. Ma-Gi in a universe found his daughter missing, also rushed out to look for. At this time, Alice in a universe picked up the flashlight left by Alice in B universe. At this time, Alice in B universe found another wooden house, but what he saw after he went in was a dead cat, and there was a radio on the table. He took the radio and hid in the closet on the second floor, and Alice in a universe came here. What he saw was still a living cat. He came to the closet, found the radio in the closet. Alice in two universes just communicate directly through the radio. Soon, Ma-Ge and Chow-En also rushed to their own little house in the universe, but there was no one behind the door, only saw the radio. Listening to the sound in the radio, Chow-En was more shocked. He thought his daughter had returned to their little wooden house, so he drove back to look for. As a result, the coal lamp of the abandoned little house was blown down.